from South Africa.
Welcome back. It's exactly 8:44 a.m. This is News and Views on Salam Media, and my next guest is Professor Mary Metcalfe. She is an education expert, and she's going to talk to us about the Bella Bill, or rather, obviously, as we all are aware, it was signed off or signed into law on Friday. But despite the signing of the Basic Education Laws Amendment Bill, the Bella Bill, as we all know it, President Cyril Ramaphosa said that he would delay the implementation of two clauses contained in it for 3 months. So what are those clauses? What's the importance of those clauses? And would 3 months be sufficient time for the experts to look into it, to debate the clauses and get an outcome that would be pleasing to obviously civil society as a whole? Mary Metcalfe, very good morning. Welcome to the program. Always a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you, Julie. So I'm going to address three issues, and I'm going to try and be quick, and then if there's time, you might want to do follow-ups. But firstly, the bill has been through an extensive public participation process because it's been through both houses of parliament. Now, in our country, in our constitution, it's parliament that makes laws. The president's role is to sign those bills into law, and then it becomes not a bill but an act. The only basis on which he can decline to sign a bill and send it back to the legislature is if he believes it's unconstitutional. So he must believe that it's unconstitutional because he signed the bill and it is now an act. However, there's two clauses that he has indicated that he's open to discussion about. So he's delayed the implementation of the act until there have been discussion, and he's given that period 3 months. If he's then persuaded that it's unconstitutional, he can send it back to Parliament. But actually, my view is that neither are unconstitutional. On the first one, grade R, that is clause 4. And what the bill does, the act now, is that it makes grade R compulsory, which broadly I think most South Africans agree is a good thing, to get more children, particularly from children who live in circumstances where they do not get sufficient enrichment from home and community, to be brought into school in order to get better early learning. I can't be persuaded that that's a constitutional matter. I'm sure it's an implementation matter. Provinces must be ready. They must have the budget. And so it may be that the president is advised that it is constitutional, but that he may also wish to make sure provinces are ready before they implement. The second clause is clause 5, and there's a lot of miscommunication around clause 5. Clause 5 has to do with the constitutional right of all learners to learn in their language of choice. That is in the Constitution, it's affirmed in Bella, and it's consistent with previous legislation. There's no intent to take away from any learner that constitutional right to learn in their own language. However, what we sometimes face in different forms in different parts of the country is that there may be a school which has historically served a particular language group and in which there is sufficient space to accommodate other learners who may not wish to learn in that language, but who wish to learn in another language. Where that is necessary, because the department is under pressure to provide enough places, as it must because education is compulsory, the rights of the school governing body to determine the language policy have to be balanced with the responsibility of the state to ensure that all learners have access to school. And Bella doesn't change anything, but it takes all of the court rulings about procedural fairness, and it now puts into place the very careful steps that the provincial departments must follow in order to ensure that they treat the school governing bodies fairly. The major court ruling is a constitutional court ruling in 2009, which said, yes, school governing bodies do have this responsibility. But number one, they exercise it in relation to the Constitution, in relation to the Schools Act, but the provincial education departments have the overall responsibility to ensure that in public schools all places are used. So, Julie, that was a mouthful. I hope it was clear in your matter.
Very clear indeed, but it also raises a whole host of questions. Let's take the first one that you addressed, and that was the issue around grade R learners. And you make a very, very valid point about early childhood development. Lots of families in South Africa don't have the means to expose their children to ECD. So here would be an ideal situation where children will be um, stimulated well enough, and also probably be on par with their other affluent counterparts during their schooling. So I agree with that wholeheartedly. When we come to the issue of the language of choice, and I think that's the difficult one. I think historically we do know that the areas like in the Cape Province, Eastern, Northern, Western Cape, historically, that is an Afrikaans speaking area of the country. Um, and I think maybe there's a lot of misunderstanding on that issue. Government is not saying that we're going to be doing away with Afrikaans. I presume the status quo remains. But then the question is, how do you accommodate a child in a majority Afrikaans teaching and learning school if the child probably is proficient in a black language? Will government or the department have sufficient resources to accommodate that child or that group of children? Going a step back, Mary, to the grade art teachers, I've just heard somewhere recently that even though it's the right route to be going, we won't have enough teachers to be able to take on grade R learners. They are stretched as it is, and there just are not enough teachers to go around. I do have a third question, but let's focus on these two, and then I'll go to my third question.
Okay, so we're in agreement ECD is necessary. We understand that the implementation of grade R has to be practicable. Provinces need to be able to plan. They need to make sure that there's enough teachers, that they have the salary bill, they have the salary resources. Well, they have the financial resources to pay the salary. And so, the Minister of Basic Education, Minister Kwarube, has indicated that she's concerned about those issues. I think those issues are valid, and that it does mean that we need careful and thorough reports from each province about when they are ready to implement it. Does that cover you in terms of grade R?
Thank you. I'm a bit skeptical on that, but let's see how this is going to play out. Then, of course, the accommodation of language in probably predominantly Afrikaans speaking, well,
Very good.
the Cape region. Yeah.
So, firstly, in the South Africa at the moment, there this is more or less the norm. Most learners attend schools where they learn in the home language for the first 3 years, and now with grade R for the first 4 years. Of course, there's parts of the country where this is much more complex. There's so many areas of our country which are multilingual, where learners are able to move between languages, and this is seen as a strength. Generally, the policy of the Department of Basic Education is to encourage multilingualism. It's absolutely correct, and that's been the policy since 1997. So multilingualism is a good idea. What often happens in many schools is that there's a transition in grade 4 from the African language that is the mother tongue, often to English. And again, the position of the Department of Basic Education is to continue with the use of at least mother tongue and English so that learners are really have an opportunity to learn in a language in which they're fully familiar. It's complex to do, but that's been the position since 1997, and DBE is approaching that with enthusiasm. Now, what does it mean in terms of, let's say, the Cape? Let's take the Western Cape where it borders on the Free State. Now, what you may find there is a predominantly Afrikaans community and living in close proximity to a community that is speaking Sesotho. If there's Afrikaans schools in that area whose whose enrollment is declining because of demographic shifts, and the Sesotho population is increasing, and there are not enough Sesotho language schools or English language schools, if that's the choice of the Sesotho community, then the department has to intervene to say, right, this school that has now got enough empty places to accommodate learners in another language, and let's assume it's after grade 4, and let's assume it's English. It would mean that there would be engagement with the school governing body to say, how do we use the available spaces in the school so that there's an Afrikaans stream and an English
Ah,
stream or a Sesotho stream. And the department would have to follow careful processes, and it would need to make sure that the resources would be available for both languages groups to be taught either in separate classes, which is parallel medium, or dual, which is another choice, which is in the same class. Now, that brings all kinds of community benefits because it's about understanding and working with our diversity.
Mary, I have so many more questions for you, but unfortunately, we've run out of time. My next guest is standing by. Hopefully, I can talk to you again sometime soon. So, thank you indeed for your insights into this matter. And who knows, I'll probably talk to you again in 3 months' time. Take care.
Thank you, Julie. Lots of bye-bye.
Bye. That was Professor Mary Metcalfe. She is an education expert talking to us about those two clauses in the Bella Bill, which the president has given 3 months to sort out, to apply minds, and to see what is going to be most applicable and workable as far as South Africa is concerned. It is exactly 8:57 a.m. News and Views moving along. Our next guest, freelance journalist and researcher Ilham Rawut, is standing by to talk to us about another very important matter.